this is what it feels like for me to grow into who God has always meant me to be as I've continued to get healing with him. And of course, cross counsel has been a significant part of that journey.
Welcome to the Cross Counsel Podcast. We're here to offer helpful insights and inspiring testimonies to support you on your journey. We believe we have all been created in God's image, but the likeness of Christ has been damaged by sin and brokenness. Thankfully, we don't have to remain in this diminished state. It can be beautifully restored through the experiential love and truth of Jesus. You don't need to be a spiritual giant to receive ministry with us, just a willing and courageous heart. If our podcast or ministry has blessed you, we invite you to visit us at crosscounsel.com. Your support, whether through a special gift or as a monthly partner, helps sustain this work and keep the podcast going. Your generosity enables us to touch lives here in the States and across the globe. As we cooperate with God and lean on His power, we can all be a part of how our unique melt process provides immediate help and lasting hope. Together, we believe it's changing generations. Welcome to the Cross Counsel Podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have two special guests joining us. First, we have Kylie from Tyler, Texas, who has experienced incredible transformation through Cross Counsel's ministry. And we're also joined by Chuck from the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area, who has his own powerful story to share about how God has worked in his life through the melt process. I can't wait to hear both their journeys, and you are in for a really big treat, and how the Lord has used their experiences to bring lasting change in their lives. Before we dive in, I want to make something very clear at Cross Counsel. Whether we're talking about the melt process or ministry sessions, we're always mindful that any real change or breakthrough that happens isn't because of us. Like Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3:6, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. We may help plant seeds or guide people do that watering, but ultimately it's the Lord who brings true healing and transformation. So as you listen today, know that all the glory goes to him.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Kylie.
Hi. Hi, Steve.
Hey, why don't you let us know, like, where did you grow up, and tell us a little bit about your family, spouse, kids, that sort of thing.
Sure. So I grew up in Australia. That's my homeland. But I left there about 27 years ago, and my husband is from Chicago. So we've just celebrated 30 years of marriage, and we have two adult children. We've spent the last about 32 years as full-time missionaries, and we did serve 7 years in India, living there as a family, as missionaries, and over the years led different teams into different nations. But our heart is for people and for serving. So thrilled to do what we've been doing. Yeah.
Nice. And so when you say you're from Australia, and tell somebody that, what are the things that you expect people to say, and the jokes that you've probably heard 1,000 times?
They sometimes quote Australian tourism commercials to me, or they want to say "G'day, mate," or something like that. Or what's very common is people say, "I've always wanted to go there." So yeah, any of those comments.
Or put another shrimp on the Barbie.
Yes, those are the tourism commercials. No one really says that, but
nobody. That's so funny.
yeah.
And you're not going to test us by saying is Australia bigger than the country of Africa? You're not going to give us that test, right?
I'm not. No test today.
No, okay, because Africa is not a country, and I would have messed that up. So, all right. So, hey, Chuck, welcome.
Hey, hi, how are you?
I'm good. Hey, same question for you. Where do you come from, and what does family life look like for you?
Okay, well, I'm from southeastern Wisconsin, Milwaukee area, Milwaukee vicinity. I've kind of moved around a little bit, but in the same area. And I'm married. It's my second marriage, and I have two daughters who are grown. They're both married. My oldest daughter has two sons, so I have two grandsons, and then my youngest daughter has one on the way, and she knows it's a little girl.
Oh.
So things are growing, and it's really, really exciting. And yeah, my wife and I are really it's just been, we've both been a work in progress. There's a lot to our story, but um, God has God has worked so many miracles in my life, and I'll go into that more. But yeah, that's basically, and we have a yeah, we have a good family unit at this time. It wasn't always like that, but
Mm,
but by the grace of God, here we are. So thanks.
yes. Mm,
And you spend a lot of time on your knees, right? You're a very spiritual person at work, especially, right?
Exactly. I'm a wood flooring contractor, so I'm always praying and scraping wood while I'm doing it. So
That's right. You're already there, so why not pray, right?
I'm still praying.
That's awesome. So I'm sure many of our listeners are curious about the process you've gone through. So let's start by talking a little bit about where you were at before you came to Cross Council in your walk with Jesus. So Kylie, let's start with you.
Mhm. Yes, well, I became a Christian when I was a teenager and didn't really have a lot of discipleship in my walk with God. Um, and just kind of somehow kept trying to journey along with God and, of course, attended church and all the things you do to grow. I joined a missionary organization, and that's where I met my husband. And did some training schools with them. We worked as missionaries, and I just, as I continued to get older, I just felt like there's something not right inside. I just felt that I told my husband one day, I feel like my emotions are fractured. I
Mhm.
don't know where I got that sense from, but boy, was it right. And
Mhm.
so about 7 years ago, I took a year-long sabbatical because I had a personal crisis. And so that year on sabbatical changed my life. And during that year, I started the process of counseling. And that has been a really incredible gift in my life that God used and still uses. I was definitely on a healing journey with God, one that I just did not know I was badly in need of. And in God's kindness, He led me to different resources. And I just could not soak up enough to get understanding of what is happening to me and how do I get healing? How do I recover? How do I get better?
Mhm.
And so it was just such a catapult from that time into a very intensive time with the Lord. So full of discovery, revelation, understanding, healing, layer upon layer of healing. And so I'm 7 years past that sabbatical and just feel like there's a pre-sabbatical Kylie and a
Mhm.
post-sabbatical Kylie. And I feel like, oh, this is what it feels like for me to grow into who God has always meant me to be as I've continued to get healing with him. And of course, Cross Counsel has been a significant part of that journey.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you. How
Mhm.
about you, Chuck?
Well, I'll have to go back a little bit. It wasn't
Mhm.
my first introduction to this type of prayer um, happened before Cross Counsel, and it
Mhm.
was at a church I was going to. And at the time, I was going through a divorce from my daughter's mother, and it was a really, really rough time. And I did transformational prayer with the pastor of that church, and I did it like 3 times, and I there definitely was healing. I
Mhm.
definitely experienced some major healing. But I thought, well, I'm good to go, and
Mhm. Mhm.
and I just was like, I'm gonna live my life, and everything's gonna be great. And then it was just behaviors and emotions and thoughts that nagged at me all the time, and eventually a lot of those thoughts and feelings and behaviors started coming back. So I went 20 years actually,
Mhm.
before I reached out to Cross Counsel, and I was, spiritually, I've been a Christian now since I was probably in my early 20s, I would say. And but I've always struggled. I've always had inner demons and things that I just couldn't shake. And so 20 years later, I'm married, happily married. And I think I was just driving out in the country going, my wife had me, we used to live way out in the country, and she said, "Hey, can you go to the grocery store and go get some milk or whatever?" And I'm driving out there and I thought, I should call that pastor again from that church and see if he could do some more, sessions or whatever.
Mhm.
And I called him and he's like, his name's Luke. And he's like, "Yeah, man, I don't do it anymore because I'm the head pastor. I was like a youth pastor back then. But here's a guy, that's all he does." And he directed me to cross council with Steve.
Mm.
And
Huh.
so it's kind of like from there, I mean, things just took off. It was like, uh, I don't know, there's probably a lot more to say, but
Mhm.
the
Mm.
healing and transformation is unbelievable.
Mm.
So.
Yeah, we can get more to more of that later. And so, yeah, you kind of walked us right up to reaching out to us. That's awesome. Kylie, how did you get connected with
Mhm.
Cross Council?
We started going to a new church here about 3 years ago, and at our church, our pastors had organized for cross council to come and do an orientation day. And I think we'd only been at the church a few weeks, and because I trust our pastors, we've known them a long time. I thought, "What is this?" And my husband said, "I think you need to go to this because this is really right up your alley."
Hmm.
And I love all things emotional wellness and prayer. And so I went to the orientation day, and you guys hadn't even finished your presentation. And I was already thumbing through the book thinking, where do I sign up for more? I need more of this. So that's how I heard about it, was at our new church. So
Wow, I don't know if I remembered that that was when I came down.
yes, you were there.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah.
And just a little side note, it's amazing that one of my relatives actually knows you as well. I think we figured that out on Facebook. So
Yes, I did.
it's
Yes.
small world. And then Chuck and I
Yes.
were talking earlier today, and a former pastor of mine and somebody who was on staff at another church that I went to, their dad led Chuck to Jesus.
Oh
Mm.
my
Like,
word.
what
Wow.
is happening? So when you when you first stepped into cross council, like what was specifically going on, and how did you feel when you first stepped into it? And Chuck, I know that you said you had ministry 20 years ago, but you said it was kind of a whole new thing. And so why don't you share a little bit more about those beginning sessions that you had at cross council?
Um, I was struggling with old, like I said, 20 years ago, I was
Mhm.
going through divorce and I was struggling with, at the time, with pornography.
Mm-hmm.
And that went away. Like that when I did that session back then, that was taken care of, you know. It seemed like it was.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got to cross council again, 20 years later, I wasn't struggling with actually doing it, but they can, a lot of times people say you cannot be doing it, but the want to isn't gone.
Mm-hmm.
So the want to was there. It was like I was, at that time, I was struggling with kind of like just white knuckling, kind of like
Mm.
just not doing it, but my mind, but the urge was strong, and then there was some feel things that went along with that, that I just needed help with, I was not at peace within myself, you know, I had, you can have a good family and support, and think everything's okay. But what I found through doing this with cross counsel, the only one who can really um, take care of that is the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And when I came to cross council, um, yeah, when I did my first session and I talked about it, it's been kind of like chipping away at it, but it wasn't only, it hasn't only been one circumstance. It's been a lot of like peeling of the onion, a lot of situations
Mm.
God has
Amen.
dealt with through cross counsel with me.
Nice. Kylie, anything you want to share along those lines?
I think for me, um, I really was wanting some, I really was hurting inside, a lot of anxiety, a lot of, I had had a season of panic attacks and um, had come to learn of um, that what I had experienced earlier in life was actually had a name, and its name was trauma, and I didn't know that. And I think how it began to play out in my life was I kept um, bumping up against pain in my heart relationally with people and then in circumstances. And I kept wondering why. It's kind of like those bumper cars, you drive around and you hit into people, but you're just going in a loop. And that's kind of what it felt like relationally for me. I would make progress or move along relationally, and then here we go again. Here's that same issue coming up again, and that same pain, that same ache, um, and just a lot of anxiety. And so I was really looking for help. I was looking for how can I continue to move forward, and maybe I could find something here at Cross Council, and um, yeah, found Jesus here on every occasion that I've had a session. And I've just found the whole process so intriguing. I remember at the orientation day watching the video that was shown and just so intrigued about the process and the questions and how Jesus enters into the story and brings such beautiful peace and freedom. And so um, it gave me hope that maybe there's something here for me too that I could walk in myself. So yeah, definitely experienced a lot of layers being peeled back, and in God's kindness and right timing. Sometimes I enter in thinking, this is what I need
Hmm.
to bring or hear. And yeah, I appreciate God's wisdom and giving me what I need at the time. So
I love that you used the term intriguing because the process is intriguing. And I
mm,
think, and I'll just throw this out to the two of you, I think the process is intriguing because it's something that God has designed the whole
mhm,
time. Maybe not exactly in the systematic way that we do it has it been used. But
yeah,
where I'm actually going is the reason it's intriguing is because people are intriguing. But the both of you are on this path to become more adept at facilitating this process.
mhm,
And it's something that I think that we as instructors could do a better job of and talk more about it on the podcast, that a curiosity and a fascination with people
mm,
is so important because
mhm,
if we're not curious, if we're not fascinated by people, if we're not intrigued by this process, then we won't be as fully engaged as we can be on our side. And it is just such an amazing process because Jesus has been knocking. He,
mm,
he was knocking at the door of my heart, probably in so many areas that I was ignorant of for a long
mm,
time.
mm,
And so this process actually alerts us to how often he is knocking, and then that we're not just giving lip service to answering the door. Just because
mm,
Jesus knocks, I don't think the way it works is, hey, Jesus, yeah, let yourself in. I think it really, so that is
mm,
the dynamic engagement and partnership that we have, that
mm,
it's those choices to, okay, am I really willing to open this door up? And for some people, when they're in a ministry session, they are so engaged in the process and reliving it to a point where they are not sure they really do want anybody else in that place because they felt your word, Kylie, is that
mm,
trauma. being
Mm,
traumatized.
mm,
And even though their head knows that Jesus is good and he's kind and he's safe, there's a part of them in that space that's like, I'm not so sure. And so even
mm,
that idea for some people to just crack the door open to Jesus,
mm,
even just a little bit, people start to make tremendous headway because the crack becomes a bigger crack and it becomes this wide open door. Now there are some people who are bananas. It's like you go to a memory, they quickly identified the belief. Are you willing to let Jesus in that place? Is there any resistance? No. They swing the door open and they have,
mm,
amazing moments with Jesus. It doesn't
mm,
always work that way. Sometimes there's a lot more of cracking the door open in certain places, or us having our hand on the knob of the door. Like, is that good enough? But no, to turn it and to open it is a
mm,
really big deal.
mm,
So would either of you two mind sharing with more specificity where you've had in a memory, and not dishonoring people that are in your family or close to you? We don't want to do that, but just to be able to say, wow, when I had this moment with Jesus, when I identified this lie and I
mm,
got this truth that went further than just my head, it went into my heart. Those kind of
mm,
breakthroughs. Is there anything that comes to mind for either of you?
Yeah, I can share something.
Great.
Yeah, as a session I did, I wanted to quick say too, when I was talking about um, the want to that I had, that desire to do something that I used to do. It sparked it when you said, Kylie, about the trauma, because
mm,
there was some trauma, huge, big time trauma inside of me that God has dealt with through this process. But that want to that was my only way of dealing with that trauma for years, for
mm,
many years. That was how I coped with uh, the hard feelings, the trauma, and the lies that I was believing. But one session I had with Steve, and I was actually working up in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. I was in my work truck and using my iPhone.
mm,
But I honestly, a lot of times when I do a session, I don't know, have no idea what's going to happen, what's going to come
mm,
up. And so we started talking about, I think it was some anger that I had about something. It could have been a situation at work, a job site situation. And we started talking about that. And in a session, you're supposed to hold on to that feeling, feel what you're feeling and see where it takes you. So it took me to the house I grew up in, and I grew up in a hard situation, um, a broken home. And I was in the kitchen, the house I grew up in, and it was a memory of, um, for some reason, I got in so much trouble when I was a kid all the time. And my dad, um, and I don't, like you said, I don't say this to bash my dad because my dad is a great guy, but we're all human. Anyway, I did something, I don't know what I did, but he grabbed me by the shirt and he slammed me against the wall.
mm,
And I must have been an adolescent, something like that. And I was in that memory, I remember just, you have to be willing to go through the pain. That's huge with this. You have to be willing to go to feel whatever it is. And I think some people don't want to, but I want freedom. Someone said to me, might have been you, Steve, how free do you want to be? And
mm,
I was like, I'm sick of this. I want to be free.
mm,
Mhm.
And so I'm remembering being pinned up against a wall and bawling and bawling and bawling. And then in this process, we're trying to find what is the lie that you're believing. What is the lie? The lie I was believing was came out that I'm good for nothing.
mm,
I'm scum. I'm good for nothing. And I believed that for my whole life,
Mhm.
for for a long, long time.
Mhm.
And uh, and then the miraculous thing is when we invite Jesus in, what is Jesus' perspective? And I might start crying right now. I don't know. But
It's allowed.
yeah. But, so it doesn't happen. It doesn't always happen right away. Sometimes you have to be patient. So
Mhm.
I'm in the memory and the believing I'm good for nothing. You're good for nothing. And we invited Jesus in. What is Jesus, God's perspective, Jesus' perspective on what I was believing? And it wasn't words. It wasn't a Bible verse, which is all good, but that's not what it was.
Mhm.
It was a memory further back of me being real little, like 3 years old.
Mm.
The same guy who was pinning me up against the wall, excuse me,
Mhm.
was carrying me upstairs, patting me on the back.
Mm.
And the voice I heard from Jesus was, "Your daddy loves you."
Mhm.
Wow.
So, excuse me. So in that moment, there was a lot of healing. Like a lot, I cried and cried and cried after that because I knew that that lie no longer was living. That was
Mm.
gone. So that was one of a bunch of healing moments. And I've
Mm.
had a bunch. I've done a lot of sessions with Steve and Mary and Carol, so
Mhm.
and other people in our group. So, but yeah, that was amazing. So
Mm.
That's awesome.
It's
yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Kylie, is there anything that you want to share?
Sure. I was thinking about this, and this summer I had a particularly um, very intense session with Mary and Jesus. And it just never ceases to amaze me how I come into a session with a particular emotion, and I'm thinking in my mind what memory connects with this feeling. And I think almost every time that's not what the Lord brings up. So I had actually come into the session with to Mary, and the struggle that I'd been feeling for quite a while was that I'm not smart enough
Mhm.
to learn how to do transformational prayer with people. And I had bought the book, and I've done level 1 and level 2, and my heart is so drawn to this, and I really want to learn how to do it. Um, but that belief that I'm just not smart enough to learn how to do this. And so I thought, okay, I need some truth about this. And so that's what I brought in the session. And I was quite surprised with the memories that came up from my childhood, just that where that pain connected to throughout the years. And the uh, what I had felt about myself was that my best isn't good enough, even though I'm trying, even though I do my best. And just even thinking that I'll never be good enough. And um, so Mary was helping me, I was processing and getting to lies underneath conclusions there. And a scripture jumped into my mind. It's from Revelation 21:5 and says, "Behold, I am making all things new." And that really connected with some of the memories that were coming up for me. But still, I didn't have complete peace as Mary helped me just look around and to see, is there anything else there? Yes, there was more there. There were feelings of shame. And even in some of the memories, um, as I looked around to try and see, Jesus, are you even here? Where are you when this was happening? And just noticing Jesus seemed present but disengaged, or I couldn't, it was like he was faceless almost. And the sense that I was carrying, which has been true basically all my life, and I'm still working through, is that it's all up to me, that I have to gather all the knowledge I need to survive. I have to be strong enough. Uh, and so even to the point in part of this process with Mary was I was telling Jesus, I'm so sorry that I'm not enough. And so she continued to work with me, and just I was aware of the frustration towards myself that I felt. And just towards, as we kept going along, I felt like Jesus didn't, he saw me, he saw my struggle, but he didn't love me enough to help me.
Mm.
And that he just didn't choose me. He chose others and he helped others, but he sees me suffering here and he's with me, but he's not helping. And suddenly I had this most vivid image that I have ever had. And it reminded me of the story in the Bible where Jesus is on the cross and he looks down and he says, John, this is your mother, this is your son, that circumstance. And the picture in my mind was of Jesus looking at me just like that and saying, this is my daughter. And those words went so incredibly deep. I was weeping and weeping in the session with Mary, just from someplace so very deep, where I, for the first time ever, felt this belonging, that it occurred to me, if I'm his daughter, then he's my father. And I felt seen, I felt chosen, I felt wanted. And the weeping was so healing because of the truth that I was encountering right there in that ache that had been there for many years. And I felt so soothed, and my heart just felt a peace and a freedom that I had not known in that particular area before. It was so foundational to my walk with God. So it was beautiful. And at the end, as I went back to that originating idea of I'm not smart enough to learn this transformational prayer, I felt like Jesus was offering me a gift in this transformational prayer and was encouraging me, open it and receive it. And so that's what I feel. This is a gift that I'm unwrapping and exploring with him. So yeah, it was very beautiful.
So, very cool.
Yeah, it's so awesome to hear that. I haven't heard that part of your story with Chuck. I've done more sessions with him and we've been in classes together, Kylie, but there's so much that we could break down in both of those examples that you both gave, and especially with the idea of a lie that says, I'm not smart enough to do this. And and you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but for our listeners, that's not what we call a core lie. It's a conclusion that we come to. It's an assessment that we've made about something. And if I didn't understand this ministry and somebody said, you know what, I'm just not smart enough, da 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 da, I would have said, you know what, Kylie, I've seen you operate before. You're one of the smartest people that I know. You know what? I think you just need to pray and ask God to give you more strength to get through that sort of weird perspective that you have. And you know what? I'm here for you. I don't know exactly all that I would say because I'm in such a different space. But I think there, even within the Christian world, we might even try to, out of that brokenness, even convince ourselves that we're just being really humble about that. And I just think there's so much more to what Jesus wants to do. And your example, both of your examples show that Jesus can go way beyond what we would ever ask or imagine. His peace is beyond understanding. The world offers peace, and the kind of peace the world could offer is something that even a good Christian person could, like, oh, you shouldn't think that way about yourself. It's a way of just, I don't know, I'm struggling with use the word coddle, but we kind of do. We kind of coddle people. And no, I think you should just go for it. It's really okay. And if that's all we did, look at what we would miss out on
Yes,
by just,
exactly.
yeah, like you wouldn't trade that moment where you see Jesus looking down on you and calling you daughter and you
Hmm.
knowing that he's father. I mean,
Yes,
you,
that's right.
that is so unbelievably precious.
Yes,
And-
exactly.
yeah, and how he and with Chuck, just how he puts the pieces back together. That is the logos. That is putting
Yes.
order to the things that are chaotic, and that the
Hmm.
Lord can use something from this 3-year-old's experience to weave it into what happened to you as an adolescent and saying, no, the reality is that he really does love you. And then you can start without trying, you feel compassion and
Hmm.
understanding, and you receive truth, and the lies dissipate, and the compassion is just there, and the forgiveness is a no-brainer or a no-hearter.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's a word, but that's
Yes.
so I don't have to
Mm.
wonder why people are so moved by this ministry, because it's talk about God causing the growth. It's that
Yes.
he knocks, we open, right? And
Hmm.
both of you screamed that from the mountaintops, that it really at the end of the day is what Jesus does as we cooperate with him.
Hmm.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Chuck,
Yes.
what would you say, like, in your heart have been some of the changes, like what you have noticed? I know you've already talked about it a little bit, but whether it's just like in the day to day, or how it's changed relationships, how has it changed your family, or how you relate to them?
Since I was younger, I'm not going to go through my whole story, but I did have a spiritual awakening early on in my life, a spiritual experience that led me to be a Christian, to leaving my old life behind. I always thought I was seeking God. I always thought I'm really persevering to be a Christian. But I guess the difference is since I've begun being healed, these
Mhm.
lies being dissipated, and I've been transformed.
Mm.
I don't try that hard to want to be close to God.
Mm.
It's like every day I wake up, I just want more. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like I just want more and more and more and more. Like I can't get enough. And
Mm.
I heard people talking about that in early on. And I've never been really one to be I don't know how to say it, churchy, you know. Like I've
Sure.
never prescribed to churchianity, if you want to call it that. I don't know, I haven't used a lot of the words, but my relationship with God since I basically healed me is organic. It's
Mhm.
just supernatural. And my relationship with my daughters, like we talk about it all the time, you
Mm.
know, and my wife as well. We take walks in the morning before we both head off to work, and I tell her, "Oh, this is what happened in our peer practice," and we talk about who was transformed and who got free, and she's, wow, that's so wild and cool. So, yeah, my and I can't wait to see what happens next. It's great.
Mm. What a good word,
Yeah.
right? And it's true. Yeah, we are being healed. We are being transformed. We are
Mm.
having our minds renewed. That happens, and it's happening, and it will continue to happen until we
Mm.
see him face to face.
Mm.
Kylie, what are your
Mm.
thoughts around that?
Mm. Well, I think that for me personally, the truth that God has been showing me has been helping renew my mind for sure, and awaken my heart that I am a new creation. And I think I heard you say one time, Steve, that, well, I don't want to misquote you because I'm talking to you, but
We'll work it
something
out
like
here.
you are, I don't know what you said, but what I took from what you said was I am a new creation, and it's like I'm learning to live into that.
Mhm.
And I feel that for the first time ever this season in my life, I am living into that truth.
Mm.
So I feel like my mind's been renewed and my heart's being has been awakened to how true it is that I am a new creation, and that any debris and any layers that are being tended to by God are furthering the disentangling so that I can more freely and wholeheartedly walk in that new creation posture. I feel like the truth that I'm getting from God is helping to connect my head and my heart, because I feel like for a long time there was a disconnect, and it's really authenticating my faith. And even in sessions where I've had to say hard things to God, for example, I felt angry with God. I was never game to say that before. I felt like, oh, I shouldn't say that, even though I felt it, and God already knew it was there. But just being able to grow in an authentic faith has been very, very meaningful to me. It's helped me to be honest with God, and to acknowledge to Him my negative emotions, which I just tried to pray over before. And even just the posture of bringing this to a session where someone else is going to hear, but what a safe space that is for someone to hear. It's not only God listening, but someone else. And just that was huge for me to be able to do. It's like bringing it into the light is what it felt like. I feel like it's also helped me to be able to help my family in ways that are so much healthier than how I thought I was helping before, but really I wasn't helping. But even just to validate people's emotions and to equip my family even with the idea that this process works. And actually, my husband and son have already had sessions, and my daughter is actually going to meet tomorrow with Steve. So we are a transformational prayer family. So, and I feel like with others, it's really as I have been getting healed, it's deepened my heart of compassion for others' pain and others who are hurting, and to really validate how people are hurting, and just being with them in what they're feeling, even though it's not up to me to fix everybody, but just not spiritually bypassing people's pain, but acknowledging. And yeah, I feel like I'm just enjoying a more authentic faith and loving people better. And I think the most exciting thing for me is learning to love God from a wholeheartedness place rather than these pockets, which, my intention was always to give God my whole heart. But I feel like now, with authenticity growing and healing happening, like, oh, this is what it must feel like to love God with my whole heart. And I love Mary had said that in level 2, that the purpose of healing is not just that we feel better, but it's to help us love God from that place of wholeheartedness. And that's just become that's in every fiber of my being now. I just love that. And so that's how it's grown me and affected me. So
Yeah, getting rid of the clutter.
yes.
Right? That is so huge. There's a book that's called Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You.
Yes, I have that.
Yeah. And it was originally written before the melt process stuff, right before that. And some of those guys that and a woman that helped write that book were in our sphere for a while. And so it's just awesome that the influence there throughout the body of Christ has permeated different approaches, different people's philosophies, that kind of thing. So yeah, there's so much to that idea of living into who you've been created to be.
Yes.
And what you're saying there is really points me more toward kingdom living as well. It's like there's who He's created me to be. And instead of having this mindset that, oh, Jesus, would you come? Just hoping for the rapture to come every day because this place is just junk. Instead of the Spirit of God is wanting to bring the kingdom of God into this world. And by
Mhm.
us dealing with the clutter that's in our own heart, the more easily that Jesus's light can shine in us. And then other people are encouraged to maybe take a look at, what do I need to deal with? And just the ripple effect that that can have in the world of love and compassion and mercy and understanding, and pointing people toward Jesus.
Mhm.
That's incredible to think that way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So as we wrap up, is there anything else that you wanted to share? Or if somebody was considering cross counsel, what would you say to them? What would be some things that you would just encourage them with?
I think I'd firstly want to validate the person if they're feeling nervous about it or wondering, will this work? Or, um, yeah, just feeling nervous maybe about trying something new. I think I just want to validate that I understand that it is um, nerve-wracking, or it can make you wonder if this will be helpful or not. And I think it takes courage to face negative emotions and pains of the past, things that are unprocessed. And um, I was just thinking about this earlier, that um, thinking about a future carrying the same burdens sounds terribly, terribly burdensome and painful. But knowing that there is a way of peace possible through Jesus and
Mhm.
encountering him and his truth means that my heart can be free and I can know peace in places maybe that I never have. And then I'm freed up to love him with my whole heart, and to love others without uh, continually tripping up and bumping up against pain points in my heart. So um, that to me sounds so much more amazing than continuing to carry the things that are oppressive and weigh me down. And I think that um, something that I've felt is that even though things can be painful to face and to sit in, my love for freedom and healing is greater than even the ache and the hardness of sitting in that painful place. For me, there was a desperation. So I think it's already been mentioned, how free do you want to be? Or it's like, what a great motivator. And in the process, we get to know God better. And I think for me, that's been super significant. Understanding that God actually has compassion for these places that I've been hurting in. I just had not experienced that before.
Mhm.
That never entered my mind. I thought something very different. And so that fact that it opens up a greater love for God, what more could I want? And so I get that it can be hard to even consider for some people, especially if people have tried traditional counseling and didn't find it very beneficial.
Mhm.
They might just kind of sweep this all in the same basket. But this is very different. And um, that would be my encouragement to people.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Great. Yeah, I think I loved everything you said.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, yeah, I talked to a lot of different people, um, I'm involved in some support groups and, besides what we have going here, but, support groups and, people call me a lot of time. Actually, people from my past have called me, from the, back in the day, troubled days. And, I've been able just to share my experience, strength, and hope with them. What
Mhm.
I've experienced, what God has done for me,
Mhm.
and I think that the transparency, and some of them have contacted cross counsel. I think that transparency ignites something inside of them,
Mhm.
like, because I've said this to people. I'm like, I really just was resigned to believe that this is just how I'll always be. This is because this is because of the rough past I lived, the trouble that I came from. And so I just accepted that's my life,
Mhm.
and then when I started really experiencing God's healing and transformation, I'm like, wow, there's a way.
Mm,
There's
mm,
really a way to change. I don't have to be stuck at all,
mm,
and I've told people that, and some do it, some don't, but I'm just grateful for the people who have done it have always called me and or messaged me or something and said, hey man, thanks so much for leading me to that, because like you said, things are changing inside of me.
Mhm.
So,
yeah.
yeah, I think the main thing, like I said, is just sharing my experience, strength, and hope, and people like that. So
Mhm.
I think they'll like this podcast. I think you've inspired people. I'm just a big fan of putting good things out into the world.
Mm,
That's just been a mindset of mine recently in the past couple of years. And I think that is, again, it's kingdom work, putting things out there into the world. Because if we stay silent, who's going to hear?
mm,
If we don't share things, who's going to know? And so by putting these things out here, then that's part of the planting, and that's part of the watering. And
mm.
who knows, we'll probably use some of these clips from what you've said. It's just how you've put things beautifully. Both of you are newbies to podcasting, but you're not newbies to what Jesus is doing in your life. So you guys probably forgot that you were actually recording at some point when you were sharing, because it was
recording.
just,
Oh my God.
are we recording? Oh boy, did I hit that button? You know me. Whoops. What did I do? So, hey, thank you so much for being on the Cross Council podcast, but more importantly,
Mm,
what you're doing in this ministry that God is blessing so much lately.
thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks for joining us on the Cross Council podcast. Keep pursuing transformation with a courageous heart, open to what only He can do. There are many ways to get involved. Pray for us, consider supporting us, share these podcasts, and if you haven't already, take the step to jump in yourself. We'll see you next time.